There are rooms in this world that never quite let you go. Some are famous for their ghosts, their tragedies whispered from guest to guest in the hush of late-night hallways. Others, like room 313 of the Empress Hotel, are known only to the unlucky few who've survived their stay. I didn't come looking for spirits, curses, or old secrets. I was simply a man trying to outrun heartbreak, spending 10 nights in a forgotten hotel at the edge of nowhere, waiting for a new chapter to begin. What I found instead was a darkness older and colder than grief itself. A darkness that watched from mirrors, knocked from inside the walls, and never let me forget what I'd seen. This is the journal I kept during those days, my witness and confession. Some rooms don't want you to leave, and some doors once opened can never truly be closed. Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction, created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real hotels, events, or individuals is purely coincidental. Now grab your popcorn, dim the lights, and let's dive straight into it. The Haunted Secrets of Room 313, Journal of Charles Emory, March 22nd, 2025. If this journal ever sees daylight, let it serve as a record of how far a broken heart will drive a man to wander. It is the first day in a decade that I have awoken in a bed not my own, or not ours, as I should say. Divorce is a clean word for such a jagged feeling. Yesterday, I packed what I could fit in a suitcase and boarded the slow train north, away from the city's endless noise, away from Laura and her silence, away from the last 10 years of my life. The Empress Hotel stands on the edge of a dying town, a stubborn hulk of red brick and copper roofs, promising quiet for the soul and refuge for the lonely. I did not care about its faded grandeur or the emptiness of its lobby. All I wanted was time. 10 days until I received the keys to a new apartment on the 1st of the month. 10 days in which to become someone else, or at least less of who I have been. The man at the desk greeted me with an uncertain politeness. He wore a navy blazer that was a size too large, and his glasses slid down his nose every time he peered at the ledger. When I requested a room for a long stay, his mouth twitched and he hesitated, rifling through keys before producing one attached to a heavy brass tag. 313 etched into the metal, tarnished black in its grooves. "There aren't many guests," he said, almost apologetic. "This one has a good view of the hills. Please let me know if you need anything at all." His words trailed off in a way I'd usually laugh at, but I was too tired for jokes. The porter, a slim, elderly man, carried my case up 3 flights without a word, only pausing outside my door. He hesitated, fingers lingering on the chipped red paint. "Best keep the window latched at night, sir," he muttered. "The wind can be strange up here." Room 313 is not a large room, but it has a certain stubborn dignity. The floor is uneven, the carpet soft and a little musty. There's an iron bed, a tall wardrobe, a wooden writing desk beside a single window that overlooks a tangled garden and the crumbling greenhouse beyond. The bathroom smells faintly of old soap and metal. The walls, once cream, are now yellowed and stained with time. Over the desk, a large oval mirror, the glass mottled at the edges, reflects the gray light from outside. The radiator hisses and clicks, but the room remains cold. I set my suitcase by the bed and hung my coat in the wardrobe. For a moment, I stood with my back to the door, listening. The silence felt thick, but not unfriendly. Just old, maybe a little sad. There is a kind of comfort in that. Tonight I intend to sleep. I am too exhausted to dwell on loss, or on the future, or on the odd feeling I had when I first touched the room key. A sharp, unpleasant chill that lingered in my palm far too long. March 23rd, I woke before dawn, cold and aching in every joint. The radiator had gone silent in the night, and the room was colder than any March morning ought to be. I dreamt, but cannot recall the dream. Only that I woke with my heart racing, certain I'd heard my name spoken in a woman's voice. Perhaps my mind is still fixed on Laura. Perhaps this place's reputation is already coloring my thoughts. Breakfast was served in the main dining room, where I was the only guest. The waitress, a young woman with a wide mouth and tired eyes, asked how I was sleeping. I lied and told her the room was perfect. She nodded, but I noticed she never asked which room. The day stretched ahead, empty as a church nave. I took a long walk through the garden and sat among brittle rose bushes. The town is barely more than a main street and a post office. I bought a newspaper, tried the crossword, failed at both. Returning to room 313, I found the window slightly open, though I was sure I'd latched it. A cold draft circled the room. The mirror over the desk had fogged at its lower edge, as though someone had breathed upon it. I wiped it clean. In the glass for a moment, I thought I saw another face beside my own, pale and thin, with eyes too dark for daylight. But when I turned, there was nothing. I laughed at myself, a hollow sound in the empty room. Tonight, as I write this, the radiator clanks and moans. The room feels colder still. I will latch the window just as the porter said, in hope for a warmer night. March 24th. Last night I woke to the sound of knocking, 3 sharp raps, then silence. My watch showed 3:13 a.m., the glowing numerals cold against my wrist. The knocking returned, softer, as though from the inside of the wardrobe, or perhaps beneath the bed. I tried to ignore it, to believe it was the pipes or my imagination, but I could not fall back asleep. This morning I found a small marble on the writing desk, blue streaked with white, perfectly round. I have never owned such a thing, and there is nothing in my luggage that could explain it. I put it in the drawer, trying not to think about how it got there. Downstairs, I asked the clerk if there was a child staying on the floor. He looked surprised, then uneasy. "No, sir. Only you and Mr. Jaspers in 301. The family rooms are empty this week." I spent the afternoon in the reading room, staring out the window at the rain. I tried to write, but found myself staring at the same sentence for hours. The window is cold, the room is colder. Tonight, I cannot help but wonder if the stories about room 313 are more than just stories. March 25th. The night brought no rest. The knocking returned, always at 3:13, as if time itself had chosen to mock me. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the icy pulse of dread creep up my spine. For several minutes, I convinced myself it was only a neighbor, some ancient radiator quirk, or a pipe settling. But when I rose and pressed my ear to the wall, the sound grew softer, almost as if it knew I was listening. Sleep, when it came, brought dreams that left my mouth dry and my skin clammy. I saw the door of room 313 from the outside, red and battered, the number faintly glowing as if lit from within. Through the peephole, a figure stood in the hall. No features, only darkness, and the impression of sorrow so deep it felt like my own. I awoke tangled in the blanket, the sheet twisted around my ankles as though something had tried to keep me from rising. My left calf ached, and in the dim light I found 3 faint bruises, the shape of fingertips pressing into the flesh. At breakfast, the waitress asked again if I was sleeping well. There was a pause, a moment of something almost like pity in her eyes, as if she already knew the answer. I asked about the history of room 313, hoping for a story, or at least a laugh. She looked away, smoothing her apron. "That room's had many guests, sir. Some leave early, some stay too long." Then she offered more coffee, and the subject was closed. Later in the hallway, I met Mr. Jaspers, the elderly man from room 3111. His cane tapped softly as he walked, and he glanced at me with the haunted gaze of someone who's seen 1,000 empty mornings. We exchanged pleasantries, though he seemed to measure every word, weighing them before he spoke. "You're in 313, aren't you?" he said finally, voice nearly a whisper. I nodded, unsure if I wanted his company or his distance. He leaned closer, breath faintly tinged with peppermint. "Keep the curtains drawn after midnight. Don't answer if someone knocks and you can't see their face." He hesitated. "And whatever you do, don't look at yourself in the mirror for too long. Sometimes it looks back." He shuffled away, leaving me with the feeling of having been given a warning and a dare all at once. The rest of the day I filled with idle wandering. The town was gray, threatened by drizzle, and the few shops that were open sold little I needed. I bought a new pen and a cheap novel, anything to fill the long, echoing hours. Yet I caught myself glancing over my shoulder at every sound, as if the strangeness of room 313 followed me beyond its door. Tonight I sit at the desk, the marble in my palm, the window firmly latched. The radiator's hiss has become almost a comfort. a sign of something real in a world grown vague. I wonder if tomorrow will be easier, or if the room will tighten its grip. March 26th. Something changed last night. I fell asleep reading, the cheap novel slipping from my hand when the cold came, a sudden, biting draft swirling up from the floor. I blinked, and the mirror above the desk was fogged, though my breath was steady and the window was still locked. I got up to wipe it, heart thudding, and as I reached the glass, my hand froze. My reflection was there, but behind me in the mirror's distorted surface stood a woman in a faded dress, her eyes hollow, her hair tangled as though she had been in the rain for days. I spun around, almost knocking over the chair. The room was empty, save for the hush of the radiator and the faint tick of my wristwatch. But when I looked back, the mirror was clear. Only my own pale face, wide-eyed and gaunt, stared back at me. I slept badly after that, waking to the faint sound of weeping that seemed to seep from the walls. My pillow was damp, as though I'd cried in my sleep, though my cheeks felt dry. At 3:13, the knocking came, softer this time, not from the door, but from the window, as if someone stood outside in the rain, waiting to be let in. In the morning, I found the marble on the bedside table, neatly balanced atop the book I'd been reading. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself I must have moved it in my sleep. The humor felt thin. Mr. Jaspers was gone when I looked for him at breakfast. The clerk said he'd checked out early. Didn't leave a note, he said, lips pressed tight. I wandered the hotel, exploring floors that seemed emptier each day. I found a small sitting room with dust covering every surface but one, a faded armchair, recently used. On the table beside it, an old newspaper clipping, Hotel Tragedy, woman found dead in room 313, 1953. The name was smudged, unreadable. The rest of the story lost to time. I brought the clipping back to my room, pressing it between the pages of my journal. Tonight, the wind howls outside. I've kept the curtains drawn, as Mr. Jaspers warned. The marble sits on the desk, waiting. My reflection flickers in the glass, but I won't look for long. March 27th. This morning, the radiator was off, but the room was colder than ever. I dreamed of water, of being submerged, unable to breathe, the surface always just out of reach. I woke gasping, and the mirror was fogged again, the faint shape of a handprint on the glass. Breakfast was tense. The staff avoided my gaze. The clerk asked if I needed anything, but his voice was thin, forced. I almost asked to move rooms, but the thought made me feel weak, as if surrendering would mean I'd failed some test or let Laura win. I spent the day by the fire in the reading room, journal on my lap, barely writing. I watched the clock, dreading the night's return. Now as dusk settles and the hallways fill with shadow, I feel the weight of room 313 pressing in, as though the walls themselves are tightening, waiting for me to give in. Tomorrow marks halfway through my stay. If I am honest, I am not sure I will last until the end. March 28th. Last night I made a promise to myself. I would stay awake until dawn, keep the lamp burning, and confront whatever plagued room 313. I wanted to prove to myself that the fear was all in my mind, that I could face the past and move on. By midnight, I was drinking stale coffee and reading the old newspaper clipping over and over, searching for meaning in the blurred text. The hours crept by in a haze of dread. Shadows stretched along the walls, warping into shapes that seemed to breathe and shudder with every passing second. Around 2 a.m., the radiator hissed, then fell silent, and the air grew impossibly still. The marble resting on the desk rolled by itself to the edge and clinked softly against the wood, making me jump. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the knocking began. This time it was not at the door or the window, but from within the wardrobe. 3 slow, deliberate raps. My mouth went dry. I stood and gripped the wardrobe handle, pulse hammering in my throat, every muscle tense. I yanked it open. Only my coat and suitcase inside, nothing else. No sign of the woman, no cold spot, no breeze. But the mirror, oh, the mirror, reflected not the room as it was, but a vision from another time. The wallpaper bright and new, the bed covered in white linen, a woman in a pale nightgown sitting at the edge, face hidden in her hands. She did not move. but her silent weeping filled my ears. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. As I reached out, the image shattered, like a rock through glass, and I was left alone with my shaking reflection. When dawn finally crept through the curtains, my limbs were leaden. I hadn't slept, but I felt as though I had run for miles. I showered, the water icy, hoping to wash away the memory. I noticed the bruises on my calf had darkened, and new ones bloomed on my upper arm. 3 narrow finger marks, perfectly spaced. I avoided the dining room that morning. Instead, I walked through town, wandering aimlessly. I passed a church where bells tolled a single mournful note. Children played in the street, their laughter cutting through the gloom. But when I caught their eyes, they fell silent, as if I were a ghost passing among the living. I bought tea, bread, and jam from the bakery, then returned to my room before dusk. I kept the curtains drawn, the lamp burning bright, and wrote until my hand cramped. If I could leave early, I would. But stubbornness, or pride, or perhaps a morbid need to see this through, keeps me here. I tell myself I am stronger than a haunted room, but some nights I am not so sure. March 29th, I woke this morning with the marble clutched in my fist, so tightly my palm ached. The mirror was covered in frost, the window sealed with a thin film of ice, though the outside air was mild. I wrote the date in my journal with numb fingers, forcing myself to describe every detail, hoping logic would loosen the room's grip on me. Today, I sat for hours in the hotel library, reading old guest books and town records. I searched for anything about room 313, scandals, accidents, ghost stories, but most records before the 1960s were missing or blacked out. I found only scattered mentions of disturbances and unexplained absences. The rest was rumor and local legend. The crying woman, the cold hour, the unopenable window. In the afternoon, I tried to nap, but my dreams were filled with rain and the sound of glass breaking. I saw myself standing at the window, hands pressed to the cold pane, begging someone to let me out, or perhaps to let someone in. I heard voices in the hall that evening, hushed and urgent. I opened my door and glimpsed the clerk and the housekeeper in anxious conversation. They fell silent when they saw me. The clerk forced a smile and asked if everything was all right. "I want to change rooms," I said, surprising myself with how desperate I sounded. His smile faded. "I'm sorry, sir. All the other rooms are booked. There's a wedding this weekend. If you wish, we can move you to the ground floor in 2 days when guests depart." 2 days, just 2 more nights. Tonight, I have left every light on, even the bathroom. I sit with my back to the mirror, afraid of what I might see if I turn. The marble is gone. I have no idea where it went. My legs ache, and a dull pressure builds behind my eyes as if I am carrying someone else's grief. I write this now as a kind of spell, hoping words will keep the darkness at bay. If I survive the next 2 nights, I promise myself, I will never return to this place again. March 30th. The pen shakes in my hand. I have slept only in fits, and my dreams are growing sharper, more real. Last night, I was sure I felt someone sit beside me on the bed. The mattress dipped, cold breath brushed my ear, and a voice, soft, mournful, whispered, "Let me go." When I woke, the marble had returned, nestled under my pillow. I spent the morning packing, folding clothes with trembling hands, counting the hours until I could leave. I even called my new landlord to see if I could move in early, but the place isn't ready. At noon, I took a walk in the rain, letting the cold soak through my coat. I bought a flask of whiskey from the grocer, hoping it might bring a few hours of dreamless sleep. Now, as dusk falls, I write my last entry from this room. Tomorrow is the final day. My nerves are frayed, my body aches, and every time I close my eyes, I see that woman's face behind the glass, pleading for release. I don't know what will happen tonight, but I fear the room has not yet shown me everything it has to offer. March 31st, I did not sleep last night. I was too afraid. The room felt different, as if it was waiting, as if it knew the end was near. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of the pipes made my heart lurch. The shadows were longer, darker, clinging to the corners and stretching across the walls like black water. Around midnight, I poured myself a generous shot of whiskey and sat at the desk, my back to the mirror, journal open in front of me. The marble was gone again. I did not search for it. Instead, I tried to recall my old life. Laura's smile, the warmth of our first apartment, the gentle hum of the city below our window. But even these memories felt thin, as if the room was draining them away, leaving me hollow. It began with the sound of weeping, a faint, sorrowful keening that grew louder with each passing minute. It seemed to come from everywhere at once: the wardrobe, beneath the bed, inside the walls. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the sound burrowed deeper, vibrating in my bones. Then came the cold. Not the drafty chill of March, but a piercing, unnatural cold that made my breath fog in the lamplight. My skin prickled with goosebumps. The radiator was silent, useless. The air was thick and heavy, almost suffocating. At 3:13 a.m., the room exploded with noise. The knocking pounded from every surface: the door, the window, even the floor beneath my feet. The mirror rattled in its frame, the glass warping and pulsing as if something on the other side was trying to break through. I staggered to my feet, clutching the edge of the desk. My vision blurred with panic and exhaustion. I could see my reflection in the mirror, my face pale and drawn, eyes wild with fear. But behind me, another face was forming. The woman, her eyes bottomless and sorrowful, her mouth stretched in a silent scream. "Let me go," she pleaded, her voice a wind through the room. I stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over the bed. The window was wide open now, the curtains billowing inward like pale arms. The cold outside rushed in, and the room seemed to tilt, the floor sliding beneath my feet. My body felt heavy, slow, as if gravity itself wanted to pull me down. The knocking became a pounding, deafening, demanding. "Let me go," the voice echoed, louder now, rising above the storm. I don't remember deciding to move. I only know I was suddenly at the window, my hands gripping the frame, the night air slapping my face. The garden below was a patchwork of silver and shadow. The glass was slick with condensation, my breath coming in sharp, panicked bursts. Something, fear, the room, the woman's voice, dragged me forward. My legs tangled in the curtains. I felt the sensation of falling, a sickening lurch, the ground rushing up to meet me. I heard myself scream, or maybe it was her scream, splitting the night in two. Then, nothing. April 1st, St. Vincent's Hospital, room 204. Pain is a bright, clean thing. When I opened my eyes, it was to the sterile hum of hospital machines and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. Both legs are broken, splinted and wrapped, the bones shattered but healing. I am alive. The doctors say it's a miracle. A fall from 3 stories should have killed me. Instead, I will walk again, though I may never run. A nurse brought me this journal, rescued from the garden below room 313. The last page was damp, the ink running in places, but my handwriting is still legible. The staff at the Empress Hotel sent flowers and apologies. No one mentions room 313. I have spoken little. When asked, I say I don't remember the fall, that I was tired and must have tripped. I do not speak of the cold, the knocking, the woman in the mirror. The police visited. They asked if anyone pushed me, if I had any enemies, if I'd been drinking. I nodded, said no to everything, signed their forms, and waited for them to leave. I lie awake at night, listening to the machines. Sometimes I hear the faintest sound of weeping, so soft I wonder if it's only in my head. Sometimes I feel the marble beneath my pillow, smooth and cold, but when I look, it's never there. Tomorrow I will leave this town for good. I will start fresh, far from the Empress Hotel and its red door, far from the ghost of room 313. But part of me wonders, did I escape, or did I simply carry something away with me? In dreams, I see the woman's face behind every glass, her voice whispering on the edge of sleep. "Let me go."